talk with you. Oh, looks like we're recording. I'll say got it. So yes, we'll want to talk to you about the State of the Child initiative and hear, get some input from you all on it to help make it even better. So next slide. So just the quick agenda for this morning, we're going to talk about the why, how, and the what of the State of the Child, show some examples of previous work, and then in the breakout groups, that's where we're going to ask you for your input on how to make it better. I will share out a little bit of the input that you all give so other folks in other breakout groups can hear it. And we'll then wrap up and talk about next steps. Next slide, please. So I want to briefly hand it back to Sylvia to talk about the why State of the Child. I think it's probably more important that you hear it from her than from me.
Thank you, Chris. Yes, we know that Chris and his team have done this type of report with another Best Start community in both Long Beach and in Wilmington. And when we saw that report, we were super excited of what we could do and what we could bring to the Antelope Valley in terms of information and really talking about where we are right now. And so we really knew that we needed this tool. And like I mentioned, it's about, raising the issues in our community or even pinpointing what's already working. You will see that this report will have Antelope Valley specific data. And if there's any type of analysis that's been missing from our region, we will have that as well. We really want to strengthen the advocacy. We want to, bring more funding. And if we could use the data from this report to bring in more funding to the Antelope Valley, we're really looking for that. And really how to then bring about the community to be part of this. We don't want this report to be just, hey, these are the areas we want to look at. We want the community to say, hey, let's look at this, let's look at that, and the community being part of the steering committee through the entire process to make this report really about the Antelope Valley and by the Antelope Valley. So that's what really led us to bringing this exciting project here to the Antelope Valley. I'll hand it back to Chris.
Oops, I was muted. Sorry. Thanks, Sylvia. Just wanted to talk about our approach then, and getting it more into the how. So we want as much local participation as possible, and that includes the input from today. We also want to look at hard data about the Antelope Valley from, and guided from people who live and work there in terms of deciding what data to use. And we want joint decision-making on how to report that data, what, a State of the Child report is going to look like, for the Antelope Valley, just because some, other folks in Long Beach or Wilmington have, specific needs that they want in terms of identifying the state of the child in their communities. We want to identify what is actually Antelope Valley folks want to know. So next slide, please. So as you can, as I mentioned, we want to get local input and hard data. We've gotten some local input already into input meetings similar to this one on September 15th. And some of the themes that came up in those input meetings from community members were, what are the demographics of AV children and families? Those will include things like how many, languages spoken at home, ages, things like that, often to connect with other themes that they mentioned. A second key theme that arose was what resources are available to children and families. And that's both how accessible are they, do they exist and how accessible are they, but do they speak the languages that our families speak? Are they affordable for families? Just because they're there, doesn't mean a family can walk in the door and access services. Is there a long waiting list? That type of thing. So mental health services, after school services and others were mentioned there. And I think a part of what people were excited about was not just knowing kind of the state of these services, but also knowing how to access them, or how can we help each other access them? Because a lot of people know, if they've got a background in mental health services or background in after school services, how can we connect families that don't have those backgrounds to those services? So there was really two parts to that: the where are they, and how can we kind of as a community connect more people to them. A third theme that came up was, economics, and really cost of housing and cost of living, and how those things have changed over the past few years was a theme lifted up for folks. Are these economics going to continue working for families? Well, are they working now? Are they going to continue working for families if costs keep rising as they have been? Next slide, please. So schools were a very important theme that were uplifted, and that connects to the resources I mentioned earlier. So it wasn't necessarily just academic achievement, but cultural fit of staff and students. Is there a schoolhouse to jailhouse track, or is there an academic track that caters to both the academic and social emotional needs of students? And people felt those resources, like after school activities, that are important. So it's kind of outside of, beyond the bell, or outside of the school hours. Are these schools working for children and families? Another theme that came up was the justice system. Different folks had talked about, traffic stops, other police stops, different interactions with law enforcement in the community, and lifted that up as something that needs to be more positive, or certainly different than it has been. And then a final theme that people lifted up was the question about how are, I'll call them most vulnerable children and families doing, but children of incarcerated, foster youth, transitional age youth, children with special needs, homeless youth, others. Folks thought it was important to see, one, to get kind of the demographics of these populations, kind of as I mentioned at the beginning, but two, understand how are they doing? Our schools, our systems, taking care of these kids. I think there's been a backdrop in different people's minds of different systems not taking care of kids, and so really wanted to flip that and understand, what are examples of kids succeeding? How can we make sure more of these populations succeed? So those are some themes that were lifted up in previous meetings. You all might say those are great themes, right track, or those are terrible themes, wrong track. And that's part of what today is about. We want to hear from you all what you think as well. So next slide, please. So as I mentioned, it's not just about community input, but also looking at some of the data for this region. There's obviously the Children's Bureau has a lot of data as well, so we'll be connecting with their data. But just a few examples of some data that we could use. So the first one is from the United Way's real cost measure. So over 140,000 District 5 households earn below the real cost measure of living. That's a lot. That's a high percentage. That touches on that theme about what is the real cost to make ends meet in the Antelope Valley, as mentioned earlier. A second source of data would be from the Los Angeles County Health Survey. So for instance, they report that 16.4% of AV children report difficulty accessing medical care, which is the highest among LA County spas, and spas are service planning areas. So, what does that mean if in this service planning area, it's the most difficult to find medical care compared to everywhere else in LA? And similarly, that 40.9% of AV parents report difficulty finding childcare. And so again, if it's the hardest to find childcare, if it's the hardest to find healthcare, what does that mean? What do our systems need to do differently for children in the Antelope Valley? Next slide, please. And a final, source and data point, for example, comes from the California Health Interview Survey. So if 18.8% of AV children have been diagnosed with asthma at some point in their lives, again, if that's the highest in regions among LA County, what does that mean? Connecting back to schools that a lot of people lifted up. If children aren't able to go to school because they need to take care of their asthma, they're missing schools, school days. There's lots of compounding things that will come from these data points that we hope you all touch upon in your input next. So I think I'm handing it to Alex now to talk a little bit. Oh, excuse me, I had one more slide and then I hand it to Alex. Excuse me. So the outcomes of this work, we want to get input from you all. We want to collect data that's meaningful and analyze it in a way that works for you all. But the results will be a report that you can take away, the data that comes with the report that you could use in your advocacy for your planning in your organizations. We'll also leave the code and everything needed to replicate the work behind with Children's Bureau so that this work can continue as you all direct it. And our deadline is June 30th, 2023. So we're really kicking off this process, this fall, and we'll continue to work with you all and present hopefully back things that you all find valuable between now and then. So excuse me, now I'll hand it back to Alex to talk a little bit about work we've done in Long Beach and Wilmington, just to give you an idea of what this type of work could look like. But obviously you could customize it as you would like.
Thank you, Chris. So as Chris mentioned, we've done a few of these reports before for other regions. So I just kind of wanted to go over some examples. Just started us thinking about what are the themes, like what are the things, like information we want to know more of, just for this topic. So we're going to look at some examples from the Long Beach report and the Wilmington report. Some topics that they had wanted in their reports included demographics. So like what are the racial ethnic background in the area, like socioeconomic status. Another one was education. So information on early childhood education. What are the third grade math and English proficiency scores? What are the graduation rates like? Is there a lot of chronic absenteeism? How ready are students for college? Economic wellness. So how rent burdened are children and families? What is the access to internet? Because that can really impact not only just social mobility, but also just education in general also, especially during the pandemic. The labor force participation rate also. Built environment and health. So are there environmental pollutants that are like really in the area? Does that mean that there's poor air quality? Do children have a lot of asthma? Do children have access to healthy foods? Another big one was safety that they wanted. So as Chris mentioned before, so that's things like children reporting feeling safe in the community, or are there instances of inappropriate policing? So these are just kind of some examples, and I'll go more into them in depth. So here's one example of a more kind of quantitative one we did. This was early childhood education, specifically for Central Long Beach. So they wanted more stats on this. So this is one of the graphs from the report, was unmet need in early childhood education for pre-K children. So we see like this is the total age of pre-K, the total of pre-K age children that have unmet need. And then comparatively, here's the ones who are eligible for subsidies, and also the ones who are currently enrolled in subsidies. So we see compared to the total and the need, the actual children who are enrolled in the subsidized ECE, which is the most kind of desirable group, is much lower. Here's another one regarding child safety, which was definitely more of a specialized one. I believe this one was for the Wilmington report. So in their community, they really felt that there was a lot of inappropriate policing. So they wanted data about racial disparities in traffic stops. So as you can see in their report, it's in the rate of stops per 1,000 people. And you see that Black, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, and 2 or more people who identify as 2 or more races had a lot more than the average amount of traffic stops, especially Black residents. This is another part of the State of the Child report. So there's not only that quantitative part, but also the qualitative. So we have like interviews, stuff like that, to also kind of inform just the kind of data that's collected, and also to get another side of what's happening in the community. So this was a community spotlight of the Long Beach Day Nursery with the executive director. And in her interview, she had mentioned that like, especially during the pandemic, how much of a need there was for early childhood education providers. So they really had to even though they had so many people asking for care, they really had to prioritize the children of essential workers because that was what they found like most was beneficial to their local workforce economy. And even though there was such a great need, there was still not and still are not actually considered part of essential work. So how it's kind of necessary for childhood care to be considered part of essential work. Okay, so the next part is going to be it's going to be breakout rooms. So we're going to separate you into breakout rooms to talk about some questions. Please pick one person in your group to maybe take notes on the Jamboard slides. You'll know what group you're in according to the breakout room number. So for example, let's say you're in room number 1, you'll be in breakout room number 1 as well. And you're going to have 2 slides. So you'll spend 10 minutes on the first set of questions on slide 1 for your group, and then you'll spend 10 minutes on the second part. I'll go ahead and change screens so we can take a look at that. Okay, so this is the Jamboard. I believe Stephanie will put the link. Yep, there it is in the chat. So the way to post is you go to the side here where it says sticky note. You click that, and then you can type a comment, and then it'll post to your page. And that's how you can do it. So like, as I mentioned before, this is the one where you'll have 10 minutes to work on this side with your group. And then after 10 minutes, we'll either facilitator or we'll put in the chat, switch over to the second set. The first one is more general, whereas the second set of questions is definitely more data-driven questions. Any questions before we go in? Okay, if not, we're going to go ahead and go into breakout rooms.
Okay, opening them up right now.
Lost.
I sure am. Back to you, Darrell.
All right, welcome back. We're going to continue on. I know we have some feedback from our breakout room. So Chris, I'm going to turn this back over to you.
Sure, thanks. We didn't identify I guess, report back person, but did anyone from our group want to highlight, any of the themes we discussed? No pressure if not, and I can. So we had Olga, Kim, and Brittany in our group. So any of you three want to lift up one of the things that we talked about?
And group what? Sorry, Chris, what group were you in?
Oh, we were group 1.
Group 1. Okay, thank you. Oh, so sorry, just to clarify, we're gonna go through the groups, and if maybe like one person per group can just volunteer and kind of talk about what was discussed during your breakout room session. And thank you. So we'll start with group 1.
Well, when not seeing my group jump to it, I'll give one. I think there were one of the themes that came up were kind of services for youth, for example, foster youth. Are the services sufficient, meeting their needs? And that was both for the foster youth and their caregivers. So for instance, are the financial supports enough for the caregivers? Are the wraparound services beyond what's happening in schools during school hours for the youth? So that was one theme that came up for us. Just want to check, anyone else from our group want to either add to that or add one more? No problem if not.
Sounds good to me, Chris. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Kim. Okay, well, I'll toss it back to Alex.
Great, thank you. May I please have someone from group 2 share out?
Yes, I can share. So in group 2, we had Jennifer, Cynthia, Eric, Teresa, and myself. And we talked about the homeless services for families, like the qualifications and how those qualifications come about. We talked about mental health for youth. In regards to that, like we talked about availability of mental health resources for children 0 to 5 and older. Always, there's always like a waiting list. How do we increase availability for our youth? We talked about, let's see, I'm trying to make it so that it doesn't sound like I'm going all over the place. So we talked about park safety in the Antelope Valley. We talked about how can we make our parks safer for our youth so that they can have so that they can go to the parks and you know, be able to find activities to do and things like that. So we talked about public transportation being an issue for our youth to get places in the AV. Buses usually only come around every hour, sometimes a little longer, especially when we're talking about our rural areas, which is like down in Lake LA, Little Rock. It's always really hard. You just have to wait. You have to wait too long. And sometimes in the heat or the winter, it's not fun to have to wait. We talked about the activities for teenagers, again, in the AV, YMCA, Boys and Girls Club. We know they're out there, but we feel that there should be more. And that even if there are programs, there is a lack of awareness of the programs. Like, how do we get the word out to our youth, to the families? We also talked about the issue of childcare availability as well. There's requirements before you can even apply for childcare, but they can't get a job because they can't get a job because they have the kids. And so where can they leave the family? Sometimes there's no family support and they don't have, they can't get a job without putting the kids somewhere or leaving the kids with someone. And so that becomes an issue for a lot of our parents. I think I don't think I missed anything. If anybody else from my team from group 2, I think that was it. That's what came up for us. Thank you.
That was amazing. I don't think you missed anything.
Awesome. Thanks, Jennifer.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Maria. Anyone from group 3?
I can speak for group 3 since I was taking notes. So in group 3, we did talk about like the demographics and languages spoken at home. We talked about like if there's any food insecurities or what resources are needed, as in food, medical, transportation, health. We talked about how safe are the children walking to and from school? Are the routes safe for pedestrians, crosswalks with visible stop signs and sidewalks? What kind of educational and support groups are available for parents, and like what kind of tools, like talking about like with special needs or disabilities? What recreational resources and social activities for the youth are there in the AV? Do families have access to adequate childcare? And I think that was it for the first question.
Thank you. And may I please have someone from group 4?
Yeah, I could share out. So I think for our group, we wanted to know more about therapeutic services for families, in particular barriers for families to using the services such as social anxiety and transportation. We wanted to know more about social support for families and the need for parents to become more aware of programs in their community. We wanted to know more about the availability of mental health resources for children that are dealing with substance abuse. And we wanted to know more of community's perception of needs. And then we also talked about the difficulty of children returning back to school post-COVID and some of the emotional development problems that children have faced from working from home. And then returning back to school, I think we said that has led to some emotional difficulties for some of the kids in the Antelope Valley. And we wanted to get more data on how many children are being homeschooled in the AV. Is there anything else that I missed from that group? No.
Thank you. May I please have someone from group 5?
Okay, so some of the things that we added was 0 to 5 daycare and preschool, other data collection efforts happening in the AV, healthcare, parks and rec activities, support systems for both children and parents, As far as data, community engagement with or without children, availability of surveys for the community as to what changes are needed, and public safety. Is there anything else you guys wanted to add? Okay, that's it.
Great, thank you so much. I please have someone from group 6 other than myself.
Okay, I'll go ahead. I think it was pretty much what everybody else has already covered. One of the things that we did discuss also was the availability of or the access to childcare for before school and after school, because there are programs, but we find that there's not that many here in the Antelope Valley. Maybe through the schools where they can go in and be dropped off early, and we have a lot of commuter parents, that travel down below. What else did we talk about that they haven't covered? Because I think everybody else pretty much covered what we were talking about. Also just more extracurricular activities as well for the children after school, and just more activities in general in the Antelope Valley, as opposed to always having to drive down below to do anything fun and exciting with the families. So if I missed something, please. Alexandra, I think you're taking notes.
No, definitely. I think another thing, like kind of you're touching on, is also like what you talked about feeling like there's not enough like things to do in the AV. So like AV is often like overlooked by businesses and kind of like entertainment. Like, people at AV like really want to have more restaurants and like stores to go to and things to do. And feeling that people in the AV were kind of overlooked. And even when there were like new things coming, like not really knowing about them happening. So like not really having that access to information. So like, yeah, so like someone discussed like there are kind of like numbers you can contact. Like if you contact like the city planning of like, oh, well, actually we're planning for these places to come, but like that's not really like widely accessible for people. I think that was really that was very specific to I think what our group discussed also. But then we also kind of added talking about like kind of on that same kind of like thing of like misconceptions about the AV. So kind of the misconceptions that like the AV is not really a place where people settle. It's more so like an in-between place between like Bakersfield and LA, but that's not the case. Like the AV has its own unique challenges, its own services and things really needed for the AV community. Yeah, and then also kind of similar to what other groups are saying about wanting to have more information about like what are like resources available for children who are experiencing like homelessness, so kind of like those vulnerable groups, and are those resources kind of close to where people live, because people who are experiencing homelessness, like it's kind of hard for them to commute to those services, so like they really do need to be like close by. So not only like number of children, but also where are they in relation to the services available to them. Related to that, on like housing, so like info on like senior housing, assisted living facilities, low-income housing, and how like the Greater Economic Alliance does a good job of getting that info. So kind of like just a way to kind of disperse that more to people. Related to that, because like there's been a lot of recent like rise in evictions, and also a lot of like changes in the cost of housing for people. So even if people weren't technically homeless, so like they found a place to live, the prices like went up on them so much that they were kind of forced to leave, or were now dealing with evictions and stuff. So kind of knowing their rights, and also like where's the rent controlled housing, how can people access that, how do they get information about what they can do if they're facing evictions and stuff like that. Yeah, I think everyone had a really fruitful discussion. Yeah, so I'm really glad. So kind of like of the things mentioned, did anything else kind of pop up for people that was kind of like got jogged in their mind of things that they would also like to add? Nope. Okay, cool. In that case,
maybe Laura has a question, Alexandra.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Hi, thanks. Thanks for giving space for questions. So one of the things that I'm curious about is how, and I don't know if you're going to touch upon this later, engagement of other community organizations in this input. So one of the things I'm thinking about, because I was just there last Thursday and I finally met the great Dorel in person, IRL, hooray, is that there's a great African-American infant maternal mortality community action team, and a lot of the individuals, community members, and community-based organizations involved are very much connected with the community. So I'm curious how, if there's going to be an outreach to those organizations to get their input, and then along the same lines is how, what the outreach will be like to engage other community organizations and groups. So I'm curious, like, will the PI groups be engaged? And there's not a lot. There's a growth in African-American population. So how is there a strategy on doing that to get their input if they're not in this room? So those are just some of the things kind of that came up for me. And then also kind of related to that and kind of bringing the AV AIM CAT is that there is an initiative on the Black Birth Workers Project initiative doing a landscape analysis of Black birth workers in the AV. So will some of those data and findings also be brought into this? So I just wanted to like ask those questions and bring it up. And I don't know if those will be, I just wanted to share some of the information of other great things happening in the AV because there is a lot.
Well, thank you for sharing. Really appreciate, I mean, yes, the questions and also sharing the resources and knowledge. So I appreciate that. On our last slide of the presentation, we basically asked, you know, who should we, two questions like who should we interview and or otherwise connect with. So we would be basically looking for folks in this room to give us those recommendations as you're doing. And you know, and I'll be honest, like when we in Long Beach and Wilmington, well, I guess especially in Long Beach, we talked to My Girls in Action, you know, to get, you know, for instance, some of the Pacific Islander, you know, viewpoints that weren't otherwise brought into the conversation. But I'll be honest, I personally don't know of Pacific Islander groups in Antelope Valley, so that's great that you do and can connect us, you know, as you're doing. So really appreciate that. So, you know, we do hope that folks on the call now can, you know, take seriously, you know, that question. Are there people that we shouldn't miss talking to? Are there people we should talk to? And then we're going to be glad to talk with them and engage with them. And then I think the second part, you're right. There's so many, you know, data collection efforts going on that we want to be connected to them and learn from them, and you know, not just try and duplicate, but coordinate with them as well. So yeah, just appreciate the comment. And you know, if you don't mind, you know, Pilar, I'll probably follow up with you for contact information for folks. Just double checking. Did I answer your question? Did I get it all? Okay, cool. Thanks.
Cool. On that note, I'm gonna also pass back to Chris to kind of talk about like next steps. So yeah, go ahead.
Well, thanks. Well, I think I answered half of the next step. The other half is we're also hoping to, you know, put together a steering committee with as much community participation as possible. We've gotten some community interest already, but you know, again, we don't want this to be a report that's just, you know, someone sitting in front of a computer doing, but actually steered by community members who are going to, you know, decide. So if you are interested, you know, please do contact us, and we'd love to have you all join the steering committee with the other community members who have expressed interest. And for instance, one of the things the steering committee would do would be to look at these, you know, themes that are coming up from this input. And, you know, if I want to be honest about expectations, we're not going to be able to get data for everything that people mentioned. So part of the steering committee is saying, okay, you know, these are the most important areas that, you know, folks in AV are bringing up, and let's go deeper into those areas and less deep into other areas where we may not have time and resources to be able to get it all. So I'll pass it to Sylvia to talk, you know, a little bit about more about that if she'd like.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, so I know when we presented this at our last 2 regional meetings, there were some people that were interested. And so what we'll be doing is we'll be taking the list of people's names and then start reaching out to start planning our first steering committee meeting, and really taking it from there and start looking at all the feedback that our community has given back. And we really appreciate you taking the time today and then in our other meetings to give us this feedback. It's going to be so vital for this report for our community. And like Chris said, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We'll put both our emails in the chat as well. And if anything else comes up, any other information or any other ideas that you have that you might want to add, please share that with us as well.
Cool. Well, thank you. So I guess on behalf of Alex, Jennifer, David, and myself, thanks for speaking with us today, and I'll pass it back to, I think, Darrell now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris and team.
I'm going to share my screen with you right now, and we're going to continue on. Let's see. And this goes back again to Sylvia Scott, our director, who has some updates and some information for data. Sylvia, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Can you go to the next slide first, please?
I can.
Yes. Want to take the time to introduce our new Best Start Data Manager. Her name is Bridget Pico, and she's here with us today, and we really wanted to welcome her. She will be taking on other jobs that require data, or the presentations that will be in our ongoing meetings, as well as the next convening. So just wanted to welcome her. Bridget, do you want to say anything?
Hello all. Thank you for that, Sylvia. Yeah, I mean, I look forward to continue to seeing you all on future meetings. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out.
Thank you. So one of the things that I wanted to share with everybody is, let me actually share my screen so that you guys can see what I'm talking about. Okay. Second. No. Not what I wanted. Okay. Now I got it. Sorry about that. So as you're all aware, we have been gathering data and really putting together some of these workbooks, and over the last year, we've been sharing some of this information that we've gathered. Thanks to our huge Children's Bureau data guru, Luz Wilkerson, who's really the wizard behind putting all these workbooks together. She has taken a lot of the census information that we've had, and she's brought it down together for us to keep giving us new indicators, new areas to really focus on here in the Antelope Valley. And one of the areas, come the next convening, we're really going to dive deep into more of the changes that we've seen, or some of the updates. But I wanted to share at least one indicator with you that I think it really goes in line with what the conversation we've been having in terms of housing and the need that we have here in the Antelope Valley. And this is information that we'll be able to share with everyone that's within our network. But the first one that I wanted to talk a little bit about within this interactive workbook is the rent burden. And like I said, you will all have access to being able to this link. And we invite people to come in and just start navigating through and seeing what ideas or what information that perhaps we need to update or work more on or gather more on. But what I wanted to look at is, like I said, the rent burden indicators. And there's a couple of new things that have come up on this work. And I could start with on the rent burden. I want to first, these little light bulbs that have been added there, and I apologize, my computer's acting slow. So there. So when you click on these little light bulbs, it's a new feature that's on here, and it gives you an explanation or at least information that's necessary, or that it goes with the specific chart or map that you're looking at. And in this case, in terms of the rent burden, what it's showing is that it's income to rent ratio. And technically, if people are paying more than 35% of their income towards rent, they are seen as rent burden. And so the key is about 35% is really where it lands people. So what we're seeing here is we have the Antelope Valley map. But then if you scroll further down, you can see the different areas. And if you want to be able to like talk about a specific area, you would either, yes.
Sylvia, can I interrupt you just for a second?
Please
If
do.
you go to the top of the map and you click on that sheet swapper, that one will be more informative to them about the rent burden part.
Okay.
And also with that, just, did you click on it?
Yeah.
It's real slow, huh? On yours.
It's mine. Yeah, it's my dinosaur computer.
Okay, now there, no, is that, yeah. So that one is really telling you, those bubbles tell you according to color and the map where the hotter spots are. And that's all. I'll leave it back to you.
Jump in anytime, Luz. Like I said, you're the expert. So what we're also seeing, and we're so grateful for this information that Luz has put together and developed on these workbooks, but part of it is you'll also be able to see not only what it looks like in the Antelope Valley and how high our percentages are. So all the red is all the 30 to 34.9%, or excuse me, the red is 35% and above. And it also has the comparison to LA County, to the state of California. So it really goes to show that there's a high rent burden here in the Antelope Valley. You could also, like if you wanted to click by just an area, this is the high, according to this map, this is definitely the highest rent burden area that we have in the Antelope Valley. If you want to also look at, just looking at just the 35% and above, it gives you that, and then it shows it all in the map. That's one of the things that we have. You can also take a look at each one of, if you want to add that, and if you want to look at the go back and forth between the different levels, and it gives you, the level will give you information for that specific area of the Antelope Valley. But one of the things that we also want to see is that how interactive this is, but by sharing this information and this data with our network, what we want to see is we want everybody within the community to be able to look at these maps and say, hey, this should be named this, or hey, we're missing a little bit of this data. And this is information that you can get back to us, and then we can work on our end to try to either, if we're able to gather that information or change some of the names that are happening or that we have here. Because it's some of it has been generalized, but if we want to get more specific, these are things that we have. And again, this workbook has all of these different indicators that that you'll be able to get information. This is information you can also use for when you're applying for funding, or when you're doing just information or presentations on the Antelope Valley. You're going to be able to use some of this data. And what we're going to do is we're going to put the link, not in the chat, but we're going to put it on our group site. And what will happen is everybody that's on the call today, we are going to invite you to join our group site, because on our group site, you're going to be able to have access to this and a lot of other information that they may be useful for you. So we encourage you to do that. The beauty about group site too is that if you are joining any of these groups that we have on there, you can also have an access to create a group where you may want to have other organizations either provide information or have conversations regarding any information that we've posted or information that you posted. So that's, like I said, I wanted to give you just a quick little sneak peek, because this is when we have our next convening, we're going to do a full dive into this. We're also going to talk about other data in terms of the activity that's happening within the Antelope Valley, within stakeholders, and how we can continue the growth and the health of our network. And Lucy, please jump in if I've missed anything or something else that you think that is important to share with
Yeah, I wanted to say, really to expand on group side, it is really our communication platform. And that's what we're trying to really build and make more robust. And by inviting you folk in, like what we do in the other initiatives, is you can also post news, like when you're having activities, fun, anything. So group site members use this. It's not like a Facebook where it's just stuff, but activities might be having, if you're going to have meetings or inviting guests or new members, it grows and it grows, and it is going. So I think for me, that's the idea, is having it on group site, and the value of group site is something that I think all of you will find beneficial. And that's it.
Thank you, Lucy. And like I said, we will invite everybody that's on the call today to join that. And then you could choose whether you want to join it or not. But again, it's going to be just a platform where you're going to have access to a lot of this data that we've been presenting, and any other future data that we're going to have. That's where we're also going to be housing it, so that it could be a really good accessible way for all of you to gather different kinds of information. And
yes, even like Tracy's Policy Leadership Academy, all those recordings are there for you guys to, I mean, there's a lot of really cool stuff that's up there, and I would invite you guys to really just check it out. If nothing else, check it out. I think it's worth that.
Exactly. Thank you, Lucy. Darrell, you want to, I'll hand it back to you.
Okay, great.
But well, sorry, one thing I'll say is that if there's any information or anything you want now, please go ahead and put it in the chat. We'll also put my email back on the chat, so that if you have any questions or anything like that, we can definitely reach out and have a deeper conversation about it. Thank you, Darrell.
Awesome. So right now we're going to continue on. We do have some announcements that are community-based as well as throughout LA County. The Fall Festival Community Resource Fair is coming up. It will be Saturday, October 15th. I am really rushing through this year. Saturday, October 15th. The information will be mailed to you. If you are on this call, you will have access to our flyers, and it will be held at the George Lane Park in Quartz Hill. Also, there's another key stakeholder meeting from North LA County. We're encouraging you, the QR code is here. Sign up for that one. They will be talking about community resources, innovative strategies, educational career development opportunities. So again, this will be taking place in our community. It will be online September the 29th. So that is coming up this Thursday. If you're interested, the QR code is there for you to register. Oh, baby, baby. Our Antelope Valley partners. In fact, I'm going to ask Flora to come off mute and share about this upcoming event. Flora?
Thank you, Darrell. We're so excited. This Wednesday from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m., we're hosting our in-person baby shower event. If you know any pregnant or postpartum families, please send them our way. This is a completely free event. We have about 35 vendors and resources on board. Everyone will be giving away goodies and just kind of letting people know about the wonderful resources that are in the Antelope Valley that can help and support new families or pregnant expecting families. So like I said, send them over. This is going to be so much fun and just a great opportunity also for people to network with each other. So if you have any questions, feel free to call Yilda. The number's there. Share the flyer amongst any community members that you know, and we're expecting, and we hope we have so much fun. We know it will be fun. They're always fun. So come see us.
Thank you so much, Flora. Also, the Keppel Union School District has a wellness clinic that will be taking place Tuesday, September the 27th. That is tomorrow. So if you have any parents, children, clients that would need to take advantage of this. Again, this will be taking place at the Keppel Academy Staff Development Room. These flyers, again, will be sent to you so you can have that information at hand. Our next Best Start regional meeting will take place October the 20th. Yay, it is fall. We have fallen into fall. So come and join us for our regional meeting, October the 20th. We will have our 10 a.m. meeting as well as our 5 o'clock p.m. meeting. So be a part of that. We encourage you. And our link tree. This is how you can stay connected to us. We mentioned quite a few. Our group site is available. We will be sending out invites, as Sylvia indicated. Also, you can follow us through Facebook and Instagram, and all that can be accessed through our link tree. Our QR code is available. You can always go here and to register for our regional meetings as well. And I believe that's it. We want to thank you for joining us. Gracias. Thank you for coming. Enjoy the rest of your Monday. Remember, today is a good day to have a good day. Thank you so much.
And happy birthday, Chris.
And happy birthday, Chris.
Thanks, appreciate it. Bye, everyone.
Thank you,
Bye,
everybody. Appreciate you being here.
Bye.
Talk to you later.
Thank you.